We are joined on this episode by an author and an assistant director who we're going to talk to about her book, How to Survive on Set, the Set Production Assistance Guidebook, and much more. She is Jessica Dean Rose. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us on the program here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad we were able to make this happen.
Yeah, likewise. I think this may be the first time we have an author on the podcast, unless some of our previous guests had written books and I wasn't aware of. Maybe, Sean, you'll have to check me on that. But very excited to have you on, Jessica.
Thank you.
Yeah, blogger's not an author, I don't believe, not a published author.
Yeah. So how we usually start is going all the way back to the very beginning and ask you what gave you the bug? What got you interested in filmmaking and storytelling? Maybe it was a person, an experience, a movie, or a piece of pop culture that hooked you?
Yeah, I really grew up doing a lot of art. I did theater, I did music, I was in a band for a long time, and being in a band led to working on the production side of tours and a lot of festivals and managing the logistics and helping coordinate for all that. And as much as I liked being a performer, there was just something about being on the other side of it that, that really hit me. And I just got, like you said, the bug for it, and got into a position with a music television show out of Chicago that's been running for over 30 years now. It's older than MTV, that blended video and the music, and happened to kind of fall into PAing on some shows in Chicago through that. And once I was on set as a PA, I decided pretty quickly that I wanted to go the AD route and I wanted to get into the DGA and started working towards that.
Did you end up do any sort of formal training or schooling, or is it just through kind of, like you said, falling into it by way of music?
Yeah, it's definitely all experiential learning. I didn't go to film school, which is something I tell my PAs all the time. It's like, you can go to film school. There's a lot you can get out of it, but also you absolutely don't have to, because I've literally written the book on this subject and I didn't go to school for it. So there's a lot that can be learned in the trenches and through doing. And I think that's one of the great things about the industry too, is that if you can just get in there and work and hustle and be observant and learn, you can get a spot and you can find your way in and, kind of navigate your path from there.
So working on some music video sets and just music in general and getting that kind of behind the scenes and logistics side of it, and thinking when you walked on as a set PA, was it a matter of like a good mentor of an AD that you saw that path from PAing toward that? Or was it multiple experiences of PA that kind of led you to going, well, this is the way you go. This is the path that PAs normally take, is through the directing route?
Chicago does have a really, to me, unique population of PAs that they're very aware they want to get in the DGA early. They're aware that they're tracking their days and that they're on that path. I don't always see that as much in other places that I've worked and lived. So I think that was a huge part of it, was being in an environment where people were really working hard towards a goal. But a huge part of it was seeing, I'm very lucky that I got to start out on shows like Chicago PD that are pretty intensive and also really cool. And I got to see a lot of cool stunts and camera work and some really brilliant actors work. And besides that, a really amazing crew work and a really amazing first AD named Tommy Burke, who has also written a book about his experience in the film industry, which is a great read. But that was really it for me, being on the show with a lot of, we're doing car chases, gunfire, all this cool stuff, and seeing how smoothly and how quickly things could run, and wanting to be a part of that side of it. I just wanted to be somebody who could help make things happen. So that was just, I just decided I thought I could do it, and I wanted to be the person calling the shots. And so I thought, let's try to do it.
Yeah, that's great. I can see the satisfaction of having things run, something very complicated like you described, having that run smoothly and being a part of kind of the orchestrating of executing something to plan and on schedule must feel really good.
That's some of my favorite stuff as an AD, when you've got a lot of elements going in a shot and all the departments work together and cohesively and the shot comes together. those moments feel really good. And when you know you're the one that helped all the creative people get there, that can be a really good feeling too.
Right. So having worked on so many sets as a production assistant and then as an assistant director, at what point did you start to get the itch to write your book? Was there a specific experience that triggered the idea, or was it more the accumulation of on-set experiences?
The book started with a Word document that I kept for myself as a PA because I was doing a lot of additional PA work and I would learn in bits and pieces, but there were lags between days and jobs. And I wanted to make sure that I wasn't forgetting the things that I did pick up that I had a reference to go back to about something I'd already learned that I wouldn't have to ask again. And then when COVID happened and everything shut down, I thought, hey, I'm going to try to add a little bit of a glossary to this because that document became something I started giving out to my PAs when I was an AD. Because I wanted them to have whatever leg up I could provide for them. And so I was giving that out and thought I would just add a little bit to it. And then it spiraled out into being a book, which I really wasn't anticipating. I was thinking it was more going to be like a pamphlet. But once I got into it, I realized how much minutia and detail there is in those positions and getting those positions right and doing them well.
That was going to be one of my questions about how the pandemic might have affected things because it hit in March 2020. So was that shutdown what gave you the time to finally convert it from the Word doc into what became the full book?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I would have had the time or I guess really the perspective that I would have a good amount of time to sit and work on something without the possibility of work even coming up. And it was really good for me during that period too, because it kept me kind of connected to what I loved and what I wish I was back doing. But writing the book at least gave me something to work on that still felt like I was doing something in film,
right?
Which is not unlike the next book that I'm working on now.
Yeah, I think a lot of us had similar experiences, during quarantine and shutdown where we all were like, hey, that thing I've been working on in the background, I now have time for it. Though not all of us actually got to finishing it. And not all of us became a published author during that time. So congratulations to you for utilizing that time well.
Yeah, thanks. And it was really trying to make something that I wished I would have had as a PA because I wanted so badly to be good at the positions I had. But, there was a lot of ignorance when you're green. You just don't know what you don't know. And had I had something like that, I think I could have progressed so much quicker and been so much better faster. So I thought if there's a way to do that for my PAs and other PAs, I think I was like, it's something that needs to be done. And I guess I've got the time. So let's do it.
Yeah, I love that spirit behind doing this, not just because you wanted to get the word out there for yourself, but also in the spirit of helping others kind of demystify some of the process behind filmmaking. So your book focuses on PA work through the AD department. So for people that maybe are unfamiliar with how sets are structured, could you briefly explain kind of what that means versus other departments and what PAing looks like in the AD realm versus others?
Yeah, and I'll start with there's a little bit of a difference on union and non-union sets. The book is very much written from a perspective of a union set, which tends to have at least 4 or 5 staff PAs. So some more indie productions might have 2 or 3 PAs that are covering multiple positions. But that's one thing that I would say, take it all with a little bit of a grain of salt, depending on what size production you're on. It is written for something with a fully staffed AD department. So the AD department is responsible for making sure communication is happening on set, that things are running smoothly, that we're anticipating what's going to happen, and we're making sure the path ahead for the whole day is clear. And we're providing everybody with the support they need to get our shots and make our day. And production assistants may also work in the office, maybe like an office PA, locations PA. We have COVID PAs now. It's an important distinction that those PAs are not part of the AD department, because I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding when someone hears the term production assistant or even set production assistant, that they're just there to be assisting anyone in any capacity at any time. And that's not true. It's a little bit more specific than that. So I think sometimes that is a thing that I have to educate people on, is like, no, you can't just send one of the PAs to another state because we needed something to be picked up, because they're my PAs and there should have been a conversation about it. So that can be a really important distinction for people to understand, because people think production assistants are out there getting coffee or, schlepping equipment or whatever, but they really do have these specified tasks and these really important things that they're responsible for, that I think when it happens so smoothly, people don't even realize those are things that need to be orchestrated, right? So specifically with PAs in the AD department, they're there to assist the assistant directors in running set and making sure that everything is running smoothly, but they may have a niche job like that they've been assigned, such as being a first team PA, which is making sure the actors are getting to set and that they know where they're supposed to go and when they're supposed to be there. You may be working with the background actors as a background PA, or you may be dealing with the walkies as a walkie PA. So I think putting out this information regarding production assistants also educates people that there's a specific PA that, is dedicated to a task, and that's the one that you go to if you have that question. And I think a lot of people don't always tend to realize that on a set. So if we can educate people more on those specific positions and what they're there for and their responsibilities, they may understand a little bit better, why PAs aren't just available for other things or runs or what have you.
My question was going to be, what are some of the most common misconceptions about PAing? And you named a bunch from the actual crew, which I found funny because, more of a layman, I'm sure is some of the same answers. But what are some of the most common ones for people who have never been on a set? Is it just that they think they're gophers only, or is there something more specific you find to be the first completely wrong thing people come in with about a PA?
Yeah, sometimes I struggle on sets with other departments not knowing that if they have a task that maybe needs to be handled by a PA, or that they would like to be handled by a PA, not to just go to a random PA, give them an assignment and send them off, because they're going to get in trouble for that, because they're in my department and you need to come to me so that I can make sure all of our bases are covered, because I'm trusting that the PAs that I've put in place are doing what they've been directed to do. And when, a department head grabs them and gives them another task, sometimes they don't know better than to do what they've been told by that department head. Meanwhile, they're no longer in place for their lockup, and all of a sudden we've got a car coming through the shot. So I think that's one of the big things, is just being aware that it's like everybody else. Everybody has a job on set, and just to be aware of the chain of command and who you go to. If you need something from a PA, if you need a walkie and you know who the walkie PA is, of course, go to the walkie PA. But I've had shows where PAs will disappear from set without my knowledge and be sent in directions where they're not coming back for a while. And that could cause a huge problem on set. So just making sure that the ADs are aware of what you need help with when it comes to the PAs can be a huge help to us in making sure that everybody is supported, but also that we're making sure everything is still covered.
Right. I would hope a good PA would consult with you before being told by the producer. Let's be honest, we're talking about the producers who send them off on a wild goose chase.
Yeah. But there's a lot of, when you're green, you don't want to say no to somebody that you think is quote unquote in charge or what have you. So I always try to teach my PAs, if somebody does try to do that to you, you just say, hey, can you please go take that up with Jess, because she's got me doing something and I would love to help you, but I just want to make sure somebody can cover what I'm doing. And so I always tell them, I'm like, put it on me. Don't say that that's not your thing to do or that you can't help with it. Put it on me, send them to me, and I'll make sure that they get help, whether or not it's that specific PA going or not. Because sometimes ADs are aware of some more resources that are available that maybe that person wasn't aware of, that I can put into play to make what they need happen. So that's a big thing for me. A lot of times when I'm places where they don't do much film and I'm working with PAs who have never been on set before, just to know that, if you're a set PA, you work for the ADs and they need to know where you're at and what you're doing and where you're going. Even if it's a producer or the director or whoever gives you that directive. And I know it can be hard to speak up and say something when somebody like that gives you instructions, but that's why I always say just put it back on the ADs so that they can handle it and get it squared away.
No, it makes sense. You mentioned under the learning tree of Tommy Burke in Chicago and your role now as an assistant director. How would you say your time as a PA, not only were you logging all this stuff and learning, but how would you say being a PA maybe influenced the way you now go about your role as an assistant director?
Yeah, I mean, even coming up as a PA and knowing that I wanted to be an AD, I really tried to seek out doing all of the set PA positions. You know, being a walkie PA was the last kind of PA that I ever got assigned that task and responsibility. But I made sure that it was something that I got on a show, because how can I properly guide you and teach you and ensure that you're doing your job right if I don't know exactly what your job is? So to me, somebody who comes up in that way, I think is really important to have a lot of experience working with the actors, working with background, being at base camp, so that you know more of what their job entails and factors that they may be dealing with. And it's going to make you so much better as a leader, because you can pull from experience no matter who you're helping or mentoring, because you have that experience. And I've run into ADs that really didn't PA a lot. And they're like, yeah, I wouldn't know how to inventory the walkies if you told me I had to. I've always had a PA to do it. And I think it's important that, you know, when you're in a position like that, to learn the mechanics of all the positions below you, because that's how you can really mentor and shape people to be really good, instead of just showing up and doing what they can and doing okay, really coaching them in a direction to make sure that they can excel. Because I like for them to be able to feel like, you know, they get to leave the day feeling like they won and like they did a great job. And so if I can give them the tools so that they can do that, they're more likely to have that success.
So you've mentioned walkie PA a couple times, and I don't think that maybe folks that are like unfamiliar with being on a film set, how complicated that could be. Could you explain kind of what a walkie PA does on set and why it's necessary?
Yeah, I mean, they start with inventorying the entire walkie kit that comes, which can be, you know, the biggest kit I ever had was 350 radios. That's a lot to keep track of. So you've got everybody on set, but there's a lot more to think about. If you've got second units that are going to come and you're going to need more radios, that PA needs to anticipate it and be talking with the ADs in the office to just ensure that that's going to happen. You need to make sure that anytime a picture car shows up on set, that a radio is just inside and you don't have to run to a kit a quarter of a mile away to grab a walkie when you're asked for it. And there's different day players that come on. You need to anticipate and have the walkies ready for them so that they're not asking and you have to run off, get them the walkie and bring it back, so that you've already got it done and you can just hand it off and have them sign for it. You know, those radios, if they're lost or damaged, can run from $500 to $1,000 in loss and damage costs. I mean, that's a lot of money that can be lost through the work of a PA. And I don't think people always realize that they're keeping track of walkies that are going to rigging teams that are working, you know, ahead at other locations and things like that. And so there's a lot of detail if you want to be a really good PA and be anticipating and just be there with what you're responsible for, which is what we want from them and what we want to encourage them to do. So yeah, it's a huge job and it can cost the production a lot of money. Trust me, if you lose a walkie, you're going to hear about it from probably several producers. So, you know, it's a thing that people think, you know, oh, how hard can it be to handle walkies? Well, when they're going out to 350 people and you have to keep track of it, quite a bit, you know.
Oh yeah, I can totally imagine. And it's such a critical part of communication on set and keeping things running smoothly, quickly, efficiently, because if you have to run down a quarter mile away to go talk to somebody, that's a waste of time, right? And we all know that time is the most precious commodity on a film set. So I want to chat a little bit about your follow-up book, which is all about set lingo. So anybody that's ever stepped on a set for the first time, it can be really intimidating because there's all this strange jargon. And it almost feels like everyone is speaking a different language. Can you talk a little bit about the book and kind of your inspiration for this one as well?
Yeah, so the PA book has a little glossary that had to do with radio terminology and really critical things that they might hear and need to know. And I thought I would expand on that. And I thought, really, how much more can I add? Like, how much set terminology can there be? And it turns out a lot. There's over 1,700 words, terms, phrases in the book, which is crazy to think about, and yeah, definitely when you walk on set and you don't understand the language that's being used around you, it's intimidating and it can break the confidence of new people because they feel like they don't know. But of course you don't know. You're new. No one's told you. So I wanted to make something that, I used to hear things on set as a PA. It's like, what time did the kids pumpkin? It's like, what? What are you asking me? Or there's always the stories of, someone telling a PA to go get an apple and they come back with an actual apple from craft services instead of an apple box. So there's a lot of things like that too, where it's maybe a word that we use in everyday language that we use differently on set. So I thought it would be a really good resource because there are some books out there that cover filmmaking terms, but to me, there was a lot missing about, little phrases that you might hear where you're just trying to figure out what it is on the fly. At least if you can reference back to it or reference to something, you can, add it to your vocabulary as you go. But there were definitely a lot of times as a production assistant where I would go, you want what? A stinger? You want what now? I'll never forget. I still remember his name. It was an electrician named Jerry who asked me for a hot brick the first time ever. And I was like, sir, you want what from me? And he said, a hot brick. And he must have read the look of ignorance on my face. And he said, that means a charged radio battery. You're a PA, right? And I said, yes. And he said, well, one of your jobs is to make sure that you always have one of these with you in case the crew needs it. So I need you to go find me one and bring it back. And so I did that. But there's so much of that happens on set that, I thought it should just be, because a lot of it's not written down. If you try to find the definition of, say, a biscuit rig, there's not really anything for you. So I thought, again, that was just a resource that as filmmakers, we don't really have a super comprehensive textbook of terms. And so I wanted to do what I can to put one out. And I'll continue to add to it and put out more editions and add more phrases and terminology as I realize there's things I left out, because every time I think I'm at the end of the list of what I could possibly add, I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, bongo tie, didn't add that one. Balloon light, need to add that. So it's been kind of eye-opening for me too, to remember how much you have to learn to be fluent in the language of filmmaking and being on set.
It's funny, you're starting to mention closer to G&E terms, and I found those are even regional because you'll go to a different part of the country. Like when we went to shoot in Louisiana, some of the G&E crew had different terms for stuff like that. But what do you think is maybe the weirdest set lingo for someone who's never been on set before to hear? You've named a few good ones.
Oh, man. I'll have to think on that one. I'm trying to... last man, knowing what that means, knowing what... Trying to come up with some good ones.
Oh, you're good. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. No, you named a handful of ones that if someone's unfamiliar with being on set, they all sound like a completely shorthand Cockney slang.
Or it's like they're talking about doing French hours. We don't want to do that. It's like, what are these people talking about?
In that same vein, you'd mentioned some props to Jerry, by the way. I've seen people handle that much harsher to a PA who didn't know any better. So at least Jerry did explain forthright, like, no, this is what I mean. You need to know that. Because, I've seen some people bite PAs' heads off for lesser offenses. But you mentioned the PAs not knowing any better. Is it your experience as an AD to have them read this book almost like you take home a NFL playbook, before they start day one? Or have you noticed there's something with a lot of times, thanks to people worse than Jerry, you do something wrong and you're not actually told you did something wrong. So a lot of PAs will walk on eggshells just because they have not communicated something properly. Then they learn like 8 days later that people have been talking smack about them because they weren't told. So is part of your job as an AD to kind of give them that lessons ahead of time before they even step onto set on day one?
Yeah, 100%. And I usually try to have a meeting with them before we go on to set. And I'm I'm big on emails to my teams about what's going to happen the next day, what everybody's responsible for, and everything like that. So I try to make things super clear for the PAs. But that is something that, you're their boss. You have to watch for those things. And if you see a PA make a fairly boneheaded mistake, which I made so many more than, I care to remember, making sure you get in there and give the information, because you're right. That's the worst feeling, is knowing that people have been talking about you for days, or worse, that somebody tells you did something wrong and yells at you and walks away without giving you the correction. All you know is you did something wrong and now you don't know how to do it right. And that's a terrible feeling. And, you can bounce back from that. But the much better way is, and you're 100% right, that guy was an angel about it. And 90% of people would have handled that a different way. And I think it's also something that we need to also just educate the crew that when you have green people, it is our job to mentor and to look for those things and to try to help make them better, and to do it in a way that doesn't crush their spirit. I'm huge on the fact, don't criticize them in public. You can praise them in public all you want, but criticizing them in public is not a good idea. Pulling them to the side and explaining what happened and what they can do better is a much better thing, because man, I can tell you, I can remember some times as a PA where I was called out like that on the spot, and you just feel like you've absolutely melted into a puddle in your shoes. Like, you just evaporate in those moments. And it's really hard when you're learning not to let those moments get to you. And so I think the more that we can try to help educate people and make sure that people are going in with some tools, that we're going to have much better filmmakers and much better running sets. But it's also fairly unfair to ask a person who's never been on a film set to walk in and expect them to know what I'm saying when I call for first team. So if I'm their boss, that becomes my problem. That's on me, right? If I'm taking proper ownership of my department, and I have to make sure that that's fixed, and it's not on them. That's a big thing too, is I always try to make sure that they understand, like, if you've made a mistake out of ignorance, I'm not mad at you. All you got to do is say, copy that, not going to happen again. I know what to do now, and we're good. Like, I'm not going to hold anything against somebody, but I've definitely had bosses that I made a mistake and it's held against you, and it can be really hard to get through that. So making sure that we're trying to create a culture of cultivating them and helping them be better instead of like beating them down. Obviously, we're going to get much better results from them on set.
Yeah, I think that's good advice for just about any industry. It seems very relevant, obviously, for the film industry, which has a reputation of a history of kind of like these toxic work environments. But generally speaking, creating a culture of learning and not scolding people in public is probably good practice for anyone. Speaking kind of learning and evolving, I know a lot of set terminology is kind of rooted in traditions and old practices. Sometimes those phrases haven't necessarily aged well. Given kind of other changes in the industry, have you seen the vernacular actually changing on set, or does it still seem like there's a lot of room for improvement there? I'm curious.
There's definitely things that we are improving, like when it comes to referring to hair, makeup, and costumes. There are people who will refer to them as the wrecking crew. And at first I didn't include it in my book because I was like, that's such a derogatory term that I would never say as an AD, that I didn't want to include it because I didn't want it to enter anyone's vocabulary. But at the same time, if we don't educate people on what it was and what it meant and why we don't say it, we're never going to fully be able to get rid of terms like that and vanities. So even in the book, when I talk about, wrecking crew, I say that it's derogatory terms. I say that they're out of date because I want people to be very aware that those are not terms people take super well. And so, we shouldn't use them. But it is changing, and I think times are changing just a lot too. And I think the more that all of us just think about the culture and the environment and making sure it's changing in the right direction, I think things are improving a lot for PAs from when I was a PA. It's not perfect, but I don't think things are quite as harsh. Certainly after the Me Too movement, I can tell you there was a distinct shift in being a woman very low on the totem pole on set. So in the book, I just tried to make it clear that some of that terminology is not what we like to use, but you still have to educate people because there are still people out there using it, even if we don't think it should be used. So yeah.
I'd only be remiss because I've heard you share this anecdote elsewhere, but you mentioned makeup and hair. I heard you tell a story about knocking on makeup's door. Can you just tell that's just one example to folks, like the decorum and going back to like not knowing you're doing the wrong thing and people might not be telling you? There's even a correct way to knock on makeup's door.
Yeah. And I can tell you, I was on a set. I wasn't living in Louisiana at the time, but it was the first time I was ever at base camp. And I was told to go up in the makeup trailer and do whatever, give a breakfast order, say something. I don't remember what, but I went up, came back down. Didn't think anything of it. Nobody said anything to me. But later, one of the makeup artists pulled me aside and she was like, hey, I just want you to know this is something that no one's going to tell you. And people just get wrong until they find out that people have been making fun of them for doing it wrong. When you knock on our trailer, you need to knock, open the door, let us know you're stepping up, give it a beat, and then step up. Because they may have, clippers next to somebody's hair or an eyelash wand next to an eye. And those trailers are not perfectly level. And bad things can happen if you go up and you start jostling the trailer stairs. So, yeah, that's one thing I'm huge on. I will grab a PA, by their shoulder and try to pull them back. And I'm like, wait, don't just go up there. Like, you will be eaten potentially or hurt in some way. Please don't do that. They will be angry at you. So yeah, and it's one of those things, like, I'm very lucky that I had somebody pull me aside and tell me that, because I would have continued to do it wrong the whole show, and it would have been something that frustrated hair and makeup. And 99% of people won't tell you that. And that's part of why I wrote the book too, is there's not a lot of information on those little tiny etiquette things that can make or break your success in a day, in your relationships with people and other people feeling like they're being disrespected, which to me always goes back to the anecdote of like, don't attribute to malice what you can contribute to ignorance. They're not being malicious. They're not meaning to upset you or do it wrong. They just don't know. So I felt it was important that there's some kind of resource about that. And I think it's something that we all kind of got to take ownership of. And when we see people doing things wrong, just taking the moment and taking them aside, and in a way that is not berating them or making them feel bad, just making them aware of what they can do better, because they don't teach you that in film school. I don't think there are any classes on being a PA in most film schools, at least that I'm not aware of. Or even like being an AD. I find a lot of, I'll have kids who come out of film school and they're like, yeah, what's an AD? I'm like, well, you missed something. Something's missing from that curriculum. You should definitely, or like they've never turned on a walkie before. I think that's a huge gap in film education, at least from my observations of PAs that I've gotten that have come fresh from film school. I think if they had a little bit more of that, they would walk onto set way more confident and able to execute. Like, if you've never turned on a radio before, you don't even know that, like, hey, you should take the end of your headset wire, thread it down the back of your shirt, and then connect it to your radio. Because if you don't do that, your wire is going to be going crazy and you're going to get snagged on things and it's going to be a difficult day. So there are little tiny things like that that just and can make you look like it's not your first day, because that's not a good feeling when people are looking at you like, oh God, we've got somebody that we've got to teach. I try to give a very brief rundown to all new PAs because, like, I want them to know channel 2 is a thing. And if I ask you to switch on the radio, I need to know that you know what that means. And I find a lot of people coming from traditional film education just don't always seem to have that.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that came. I went to film school, and I can tell you, I definitely did not learn 90% of this on set. I did know what an AD was, so I will say that. And I had AD'd a couple times on sets. But, speaking of kind of giving advice for folks that are just starting out, obviously anybody looking to start out should definitely get How to Survive on Set, your book, as well as your follow-up on Set Lingo. But besides that, do you have any sort of general advice you might recommend to someone who is just starting out in the industry?
Yeah, just stay present and stay observant, because that's going to put you in the territory to be asked to do things or being put into different situations so you have different experiences just because you're nearby and you're present. Sometimes if I need a PA to do something, I look around, and if I scan and you're the first one in my vision, bingo, you get the job. So just being always not on top of things, not at Video Village, but always very present and close, and observe, because you can learn so much just from watching. And that's no matter what position you're in. But especially if you're a PA and you want to be a DP, like, you better not be looking at your phone when he's setting up the shot and you have the opportunity to watch how this happens by a professional in real time. And I think sometimes people get relaxed and they don't really take advantage of where they're at and the time they have there, because every time you're on set, that's your audition for the next job, the next day, the next time I call you. And if every time I look at you, you're just looking at your phone, I'm going to think that you don't really want to be here. And that's crazy to me, because we're making a movie and that's the coolest thing ever. But also my advice to people would be, if you're on set and you're watching what you thought you wanted to do, and that does not absolutely like set you on fire with like passion, maybe consider something else. And I don't say that because this industry is so hard, and there's a lot of bumps in the journey and on the road to where you want to get. And if it doesn't excite you when you first get there, that's probably not going to build. And so if it's not your vibe and you don't want to do the 12, 14-hour days and all that, you got to take that into consideration, because I think back to a particular group of PAs I had that came from a film school, and there was a couple of them that just didn't seem to want to be present and didn't seem to want to be a part of things. And I just wanted to kind of grab them and shake them and be like, hey, this is what you just went to school for 4 years. Like, this is the moment. You're actually on a film set with professionals. If this doesn't make you excited and you don't want to be part of it, definitely take a big consideration about if that's the path for you, because it's so hard. And if you don't love it, and if you can't find that spark, I don't think you're going to last very long. And so it may be, just better for you to look in other directions, because to me, that's the saddest thing in the world, is when I see somebody working on a film set and they just seem like they absolutely don't want to be there. Like, that's so crazy to me, because so many people want your spot. So if you don't want it, don't take it, and let somebody who does have that drive take the spot.
You're here to every bit of that. Very good advice. And I'm glad to see that business hasn't worn you down, because, there's still something magic when we walk on set, even 20 days in, and start to see the end in sight. And you still would rather be doing that than anything else. So it's good to know that you still have that drive. You still have that passion for mentoring and teaching too, which is such an important part of all of this, is like shepherding the next group in,
Yeah. And it's something that's kind of been lacking, is making sure that we are not just I don't want to just make you grow up to be somebody who can call pictures up, last looks, blah, 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 all the way to cut and wrap. Yeah, all that is well and good, but like, can you be a good leader? Can you be somebody who's able to handle the stress without letting it boil over onto the set? Because especially if you want to be an assistant director, because you set the tone. And if you're crazy, everyone's going to be crazy. It definitely takes somebody who can get that perspective of, like, even on my worst day on set, I'd rather do that than anything else. And I look back at some of the like hardest, worst days that, like, I can admit I went home crying a lot as a PA, but that was from a place of just wanting to be great at what I did and feeling like I wasn't there yet. But if you can persevere through that and keep going, you can get there. But we've seen recently what can happen when an assistant director loses a little bit of perspective and reverence for the process and making sure that everything is done absolutely correctly. Because I think one of the hardest things about being an AD is, like, at all times you have to remember people's safety is paramount to anything. And I've been in some positions where I've had to go against directors and producers and things like that to ensure something doesn't happen that could put somebody in danger. And we've got to make sure that we're raising the next generation of filmmakers to be people who can, make sure that they're on point and that we're keeping everything above the board and that we're doing things right, because there's times when it comes down to it, it's really going to matter and it's going to be actually life or death. And I think sometimes PAs don't realize that's why an AD might be so hard on you about what you think is a simple lockup. Because if I can't trust you to lock up that door that I need you to just keep people quiet outside of, how can I ever trust you to lock up pedestrian traffic when I have a stunt car going through at high speeds? I just think it's so important to be raising people who think about culture and ethics and making sure that they're doing things right and that they're learning the right way and that they're executing the right way, because sometimes it really, really matters. And we got to make sure that we can do that. And if you can't, then it can be a really bad day,
No, like you said, it could be as simple as something minute, or it could be life and death, depending. So yeah, that alertness, that awareness, that presence is very important. Again, all sage advice from you. And I will say one more time, How to Survive on Set, the Set Production Assistance Guidebook is available. Do you want to direct people through the Amazon link? Is that the safest place to buy it, you think? Or do you have a direct link?
Yeah, Amazon, or I'm at How to Survive on Set on Instagram. If you message me and you want to order a book, I always send out stickers and other goodies that I have for promoting the book. So that's another way you can get it.
We'll have those links in the show notes at paperstreetpodcast.com for sure then.
So that concludes the formal part of the interview. So now, Jessica, we're jumping into the rapid fire 15, which sounds scarier than it is, but it's just 15 questions to get to know you better. You can answer however you like. It's not a cool test, and just the first thing that comes to your mind. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Question number 1. What movie do you think you've seen the most in your life?
Ooh, High Fidelity or Dead Poet Society.
Nice. Same era of filmmaking. I like it.
Maybe Almost Famous. One of
music. Nice. Question 2. What's the first film that really scared you or stuck with you and gave you nightmares?
Oh man, I mean, the original classic horror movies and Bela Lugosi, who I love, but that used to terrify me as a kid. So yeah, I would say movies like that definitely got me as a kid. But now they're things that I love so much as an adult.
Nice. Number 3, what's the one film that will always make you emotional or even bring you to tears?
Oh man, I gotta go with probably Dead Poet Society. My Captain, I'm gonna start crying every time.
Oh yeah, even more so now.
And I got to AD for Ethan Hawke recently, so that was a special experience.
Very cool.
Oh, awesome. Question 4. What's your favorite movie about the music industry, or just something that predominantly features music in general?
I think Almost Famous is kind of the pinnacle of that is especially not based on a real band. That's an actual, kind of made up story. I don't think we've seen anything like that as far as, music based movies since. And I think it would be really hard to do again.
No, agreed. We've talked highly about that one on a few recent episodes, how that was the peak of sentimentality, and Cameron Crowe is just the right blend of all of him. In a similar vein, question 5, what is your favorite needle drop and or diegetic use of music in a movie?
I mean, I think about Baby Driver and how they used music and synchronized it with the movements. And there were, certain set design elements that would go with the music. And as an AD watching that, I know how much went into getting that shot to be just right. And I loved watching those, and I would love to. I was watching it and thinking man, I want to AD a script like this one day so that I can have to make all those pieces fit, because when it comes together, it's just magic, and you're hell yeah, we got it.
Yeah, God bless the AD that has to break down an Edgar Wright script.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I just every film he does is just such a technical masterpiece. That's the thing. Even if you're not always into the story, which, is obviously everyone has their own taste there, but just the technical precision of his films is insane. Question number 6. Who would you say is your all-time favorite director?
I gotta think about that.
think this is the cruelest question.
It stumps everybody lately. Yeah, it's crazy.
I guess I'll narrow it down to directors I've personally worked with. I mean, I just mentioned Ethan Hawke. Like, what an incredible director. It's always so inspiring when you see somebody who knows what they want and how to get it, and they know when they've got it and they can move on. And just the way he tackled making the movie, which was very intricate and technical as well, was just incredible. And then I got to work with Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead on Synchronic, and they're an incredible filmmaking duo. And again, they were just so prepared and on it, and they knew the script so inside and out and what they needed, what they wanted, what they could get. And when you're an AD and you get to work with people like that, that's the dream. Because sometimes you get directors, I obviously won't say any names, but where you're like, hey man, look at the bunny. Can you tell me where you want the actors for this scene, please? You know? So when you have somebody that prepared and passionate, and it makes my job so incredibly fulfilling.
Good choices. We're big fans of Benson and Moorhead ourselves. You did not really mention this. I know you ventured into the music business in various ways, but even doing some music photography. Do you have a favorite still photographer?
Oh, let me think.
Or even a cinematographer, if not still.
Yeah, I'm trying. I think I got to go with like Robert Knight for photography. Yeah, he would have to be my favorite, because I think there's just like a rawness and a realness to his images that, just fantastic.
Excellent. Okay, we're taking this in a totally different direction now, by the way. Who was your first celebrity crush?
Oh man, David Krumholtz in that Santa Claus movie.
Wait, you just giggled. You were Becky.
That's me.
Oh, that was you. Okay, I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell. Like, it was so immediate. No, he was the guy for a few people around the right age group.
Yeah, Bernard the Elf. I don't know what it was. That series they had, Numbers, was fantastic too, which also has like Rob Morrow and Alimi Ballard and Dylan Bruno, who are all fantastic actors.
Oh, yeah. He was in 10 Things I Hate About You, right? That's what I'm thinking of.
Oh, yeah.
He's like the nerdy friend that he like. Yeah.
Well, and then, of course, Addams Family, too, right? He was at Wednesdays.
Oh, yes. That's right.
May have also spoken to me. That may be part of it.
Yeah. For a lot of people.
Also has the most memorable line from Harold and Kumar that I will not repeat. You'll have to go watch the movie and find out.
I know what line you mean, though, because I used to watch that movie religiously in high school.
Yeah. When asked what were Katie Holmes's, what was her chest like, his response is an all-timer. So back to something in the music world here. I have a feeling you do, you've been to many. Do you have a favorite concert you've attended, or maybe a very memorable concert experience?
Oh, so many. It's hard to pick one.
Yeah, this is definitely another pick your favorite child sort of a question. That's very cruel for someone that likes music.
Yeah, I mean, I got to be real close, like side stage at a Rancid show once. That was pretty sick. And man, probably every Rise Against concert in Chicago especially, like, shows there just on a different level. If people haven't experienced a concert or festival in Chicago, you have to go, because at this point I've lived all over the country and I've seen music happen all over the country. And I think Chicago is just unmatched as far as, fans and the experience of when you're at a concert and everything just being, super magnetic.
Yeah, Chicago does fandom intensely. All right, another music related question. We're on number 10. What is your go-to karaoke song?
I don't know that I've ever even done karaoke.
That's surprising given how into music you are.
Yeah, I've gone a lot, but I feel like it's always a thing where it's like a huge wait in a line.
Yeah. You got to get the private rooms. That's the only way to do it.
Yeah, and my attention span is just so short that when it comes to things like that, I'm like,
well, did you sing in your band, or did you play an instrument?
I played guitar. I sang a little bit, but never really wanted to sing. Just kind of had to do it sometimes out of necessity. But
What's a good guitar song you would go up and help out somebody karaoke? Maybe like what's one you can riff easily?
I mean, I would love to. There's a song called "Highly Strung" that is by a guitarist named Orianthi, which features Steve Vai, and they're just shredding together. And so that song with either of them would be incredible. And it gives you two options because you could do it with her, you could do it with him, and have the opportunity. So I think that would be it. She's such a fantastic, like bar none, probably the best female guitarist out there.
So Becky, you got an answer. It's just through finger karaoke, not vocal karaoke.
Yeah, that's perfect.
I'm trying to think. I'd probably pick something from like Bon Jovi or something, just because everybody would get so into it and sing along. I'd probably try to just pick a crowd pleaser and get everybody into it.
Yes, karaoke is much easier when you have the crowd working with
Journey.
Yeah.
Drunk people love Journey.
You may be answering my next question, but similarly, what would be your walkout music if you were coming out to do a seminar about ADing and PAing, or if you're coming out to do anything like sports related? What's your interest music?
You know, I've thought about this, and I had a song, and I'm having trouble coming up with it right now. I'm having trouble coming up with the rock song right now, but there's a song called "Try Jesus" that might be good. That's just about, making sure you don't try the wrong person. And I think that's good for ADs. Like, I don't know. I've never met a good first AD that I felt like I would go up and mess with,
No, that's a good answer.
Like it. All right. Question 12. What is one thing you don't miss about living in Chicago? And is one thing you really do miss about living there?
The cold. It's the only reason I left. It's the reason I still don't live there. Once you've experienced winter where you don't have to dig your car out of snow, it's pretty life-changing, and you realize things don't have to be that way. So like a dream for me would be to live in Chicago during the warm months and have somewhere in the South during the cold months, because I miss, Chicago summer. There's music festivals weekly, more than weekly, and there's just a lot of cool pop-ups and things that go on. So I definitely miss just the amount of venues and the amount of local music too. The local music scene there is incredible. And I do miss going to just kind of religiously going to shows, but you make choices. And I decided I was down in Louisiana one winter, and I was like, hey, this is kind of neat. There's no snow. I could get with this.
Yeah. The bitter cold seems to be the biggest answer to why people are no longer there who still love that place. But the follow-up question is, being based in Louisiana, what is your favorite local eatery in New Orleans? Like, what's a spot you would take an out of towner to and say, you got to have this?
There's a couple, but like there's a place called Dat Dog that's very popular. I would honestly probably just take them to like Frenchmen Street or the French Quarter and let them see the options, because there's so much to choose from. And one thing I like to do when I have people visiting too is just go to a bunch of places in those areas and order appetizers or order an entree and split it so that we can try different places, because what New Orleans lacks for in music venues, it makes up for in great restaurants. So yeah, that's good. There's just so much here. Yeah, it would depend on their taste too. We have like Juan's Flying Burrito. That's great.
I love the concept of an appetizer crawl, instead of like a pub crawl or beer crawl, you just like go get appetizers at a bunch of different places. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, because when there's 100 places to choose from, for me, that's so hard. And I'll see a bunch of stuff that I like at different places. I'm like, well, there's no rule saying we can't go to all those places. Why don't we just do it? That's one thing I do a lot as an adult. It's like, why not? There's no rule saying we can't do that. Why don't we do this more?
Good philosophy. I'm on board. So question 14, the penultimate question. If you could have the answer to one unknown question in the universe, what would it be? Like, is there a God, the meaning of life, the day
what's holding us up from shooting? I guess a constant answer to that would be great.
That's the best answer we've had to that so far. Just so specific to her entire being and her gig.
Yeah, like because that's just, as an AD, that's just the constant question: what's stopping us from shooting, and how do I fix it so that we can? But I guess maybe more like philosophically, I would want to know like more about like a dog's experience of life, more about, I guess, what it would be like to be a dog. they're just the happiest creatures on the planet. I feel like that would be good. Tell me more about dogs and where they came from.
Ooh, we've never had that answer before. I like that.
Yes. Tell us, are they thinking more than the same 6 things we assume that dog in Up that had the voice modulator would be thinking?
Yeah. Like,
I
can
would
my
like to
dog
know.
understand me the way I think she can?
So finally wrapping this up, what would be your dream project to make, be it as, writing or directing or even ADing? Is there some type of genre or period or style of film you'd like to have on your resume?
Yeah. I mean, I would love to have a career where I'm just consistently getting to do, shoots with good budgets and lots of technical things. I love things where we're going through time and we've got to track things like that, or, different period pieces mean a lot of, elements in play. I would love to just have a career where I'm constantly getting to do things with big stunts and special effects, because those are the things that just make me. It's like whenever somebody has brought up, during times of drought or strike, like we're going through right now, it's like, why can't you quit? And it's like, man, because I've had that feeling when we ran over a cop car with a cement truck and nobody got hurt or in trouble. I get to set my friends on fire from time to time. Like, how can you beat that? I get to stay a kid just playing cops and robbers with my friends forever. So, like, how can I not pursue that? Especially once you've done it, the huge stunts and intricate special effects. I love working with the prosthetics and creature actors. Funnily enough, I got Doug Jones on one of the one things that he's done as like a person, not a creature. But that was so special, because I think his work and people who do that kind of work and the effects makeup artists, like, man, that is true magic. And I could never do it, but I have such respect and reverence for the people who do.
Well, you heard it here. Join the film industry. Set your friends on fire.
Safely, and nobody gets arrested. Like, we
I totally get it. Yeah. Get to
Yeah.
be part of a giant magic trick, which is so cool.
Like, I've been part of a high-speed cop chase and, like, I wasn't getting arrested, So it's I think it's the only way to be like, yeah, I got to blow up a building today. How else am I going to get to do that without hurting someone or going to jail if I'm not a filmmaker?
Indeed, it's like the closest thing to adults still playing pretend like kids in the film industry.
Yeah.
That concludes the rapid fire. You aced it. There were no points, but you still did great there. Good answers across the board there.
So like Sean said, you did awesome on that. And we really had a great time chatting with you today. I learned some things that I didn't know. I had no idea how to knock on the makeup department store. Now I do. So thank you for imparting your wisdom. Really excited for folks to check out your books. And, besides the books, is there anything else you want folks to keep an eye out for? Any projects or films you worked on that are coming out soon?
I guess just stay tuned, because I named the first book How to Survive on Set, the Set Production Assistant's Guidebook, which I know is a long-winded name. But with the second book, I decided to keep with the How to Survive on Set and to make it a series. So I'll keep writing. I hope to write about ADing. I've been doing a lot of class content about using a radio, understanding the call sheet, things you need to know when you step on set. So I'm going to be doing some classes with that kind of material and handing out a fake call sheet and helping people understand more about that, because that's a whole other thing that is like a foreign language when it gets handed to you, right? So be on the lookout for classes and more books.
Yes,
Awesome.
And again, those links are at paperstreetpodcast.com on the episode show notes. And otherwise, you can also search Jessica Dean Rose on Amazon to find it, or through her website, which we'll also attach to. She said she'll throw stickers and stuff in there. So I think that's how you should purchase it. So
Yes, go direct to the source.
Got lots of fun promo items for the next book, too. So when that comes out and is released, anybody who orders through me, I'll be including stickers and pins and fun things, so people know you're certified in the language of Go.
Nice. We very much appreciate the time. We're glad we could finally make this work. It usually takes a global pandemic or a giant strike to capture some of you guys who are so busy doing the Lord's work, for lack of a better term, and teaching the next generation of folks how to not be goofballs on set, actually learn that they're doing the wrong thing. So it's valuable stuff. We recommend this book highly to anybody. Again, whether you've done PAing or not, it's very helpful just for a myriad of ways. So again, thank you for the time.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. And I had such a great time chatting with you guys and, talking about filmmaking.
Wonderful. Have a great evening, Jessica.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
You too.
All right. Take care.